It's wonderful to see all of you here. Thank you so much for coming along this lunchtime. And we are asking that question up there. How can God be good and allow suffering? It's not exactly a light topic as you're having your sandwiches. And yet it is an unavoidable topic. Could you imagine if the Christian Union put on a week like this, but ducked this question? Because everywhere you look, there's pain. There are tragedies after tragedy in the news, and also not just in the news. The people around us are really suffering, really struggling. I'm just wondering, talking about struggling, should I just use this? Yeah. Great. Well, sorry about that. This is a huge question. Everywhere we look, there's pain emotionally, mentally, physically. And it does raise huge philosophical questions. Some of us might be here today because we're asking those philosophical questions. We're grappling with them. But at the same time, for some of us, this issue runs a little bit deeper. It's not just academic. Some of us here might be really hurting. And so before I say anything else, I want to say thank you so much for coming. Thank you for being here and listening. Thinking through this topic is not always comfortable, and it's not always easy. But at the same time, I'm really happy to be here. We at the Christian Union discovered in Jesus something that has been satisfying to us, even in our pain. And if you were here with us last night, you got to hear Toby sharing that. And we would love to share that this lunchtime. And we've got to, because for so many people, suffering itself is a reason to dismiss God. They look at all of the pain and the injustice, and they ask, where is God? And the suffering, for some of them, shows he isn't there at all. I don't know if you watched this last year, but Stephen Fry was on Irish TV, and he said this. If he ever had to say to God, he'd say this. I'd say, bone cancer in children? What's that about? How dare you? How dare you create a world in which there's so much misery that's not our fault? The moment you banish him, life becomes simpler, cleaner, purer, more worth living, in my opinion. And it's not just Stephen Fry. The Greek philosopher Epicurus put it like this, people think. If God were powerful, he'd be able to stop suffering in our world. If God were loving, he'd want to stop suffering in our world. But there is suffering in our world. So either he's not powerful, or he's not loving, or he isn't even there at all. Which, when you first hear it, sounds very compelling, but there is a huge logical flaw in that. Yes, suffering could come down to divine cruelty or divine impotence, but there is another option. It could be that God has a reason to allow suffering we don't know anything about. Now, at this point, we think, what possible reason could God have to allow suffering? And can I just say, I don't pretend to know it. But that's kind of my point. We as human beings are finite and our perspective is limited. If there is a God who made us and made everything, why would we assume that he shares our limited perspective? If God is just like us and no bigger, then of course we'd expect to understand everything he does. But what if God is bigger than us? If so, then it's at least possible he has a reason to allow suffering we can't get at. And if we dismiss that possibility outright, then we're in danger of some very shallow thinking, the kind that says, if I can't understand it, it can't exist. But if God is bigger than us, then that falls apart. And can I say that the God who is bigger than us, transcending our understanding, is the only kind of God Christians believe in. The only kind of God I'd want to believe in. And the God who is big enough to blame for suffering must also be big enough to have a reason for it we don't comprehend. Now, nothing I've just said makes the fact of suffering any less painful. But it does show that the fact of suffering doesn't automatically rule God out of the picture. And I would also want to go further. Suffering is a problem for the believer. But actually, it raises huge problems for those who dismiss God. Take God out of the picture, and where are you left?
Let me quote Richard Dawkins, who puts it very honestly, writing in River Out of Eden. He says, in a universe of electrons and selfish genes, blind physical forces and genetic replication, some people are going to get hurt, other people are going to get lucky, and you won't find any rhyme or reason in it, nor any justice. The universe that we observe has precisely the properties we should expect if there is, at bottom, no design, no purpose, no evil, no good, nothing but blind, pitiless indifference. Christians talk about the problem of suffering, the problem of evil. But at least we have a problem. Take God out of the picture, and then there's no more purpose, no design. And in that meaningless universe, how can we say that suffering really is objectively a problem? How can we say that it is objectively wrong? When we encounter suffering, our instinct is to say, it shouldn't be this way. That's wrong. But if there's no God, who's left saying it shouldn't be this way? Just us. And that's not an objective statement anymore. That's just an opinion. And all of my objections, well, they're nothing more than my preference. The writer C.S. Lewis was an atheist who became a Christian, and dealing with the fact of his suffering was part of his journey to faith. Here's what he said. My argument against God was that the universe seemed so cruel and unjust. But how had I got this idea of just and unjust? A man does not call a line crooked unless he has some idea of a straight line. What was I comparing this universe with when I called it unjust? I found that in my own life. Here's a picture coming up of me when I was a student and my friend Rebecca. I have to say that because so many people don't immediately think that it's me. Apparently the 5 years since then have withered me beyond all recognition. But that's my friend Rebecca, and she and I were very close. We both studied English together. She was a precious friend. She was a brilliant rower. She had a very, very lively mind, and everyone loved her. And so when she died in a car crash in my third year, I really, really struggled. I was devastated. I got a taste of what suffering was really like. I couldn't get out of bed in the mornings, and I was grappling with huge questions. And if I'm honest with you, I'm still working through some of that. But I also had to be honest. If we are nothing more than time plus matter plus chance, then nothing meaningful had happened. Rebecca was just a bag of cells, nothing more. Some people get lucky, some people get hurt. But that conclusion made no sense of her. She didn't feel like an accident. She felt like a gift. Someone who'd come into my life, come into our lives, and made us smile and laugh and cry. Someone who was worth missing. Someone who was worth crying over. A gift to me. And if a gift, then one that pointed to a giver. Her death, the more I think about it, underlines to me how precious she was to me. And the last thing I think of her as is accidental, random, and meaningless. The fact that suffering hurts, the fact that it seems like something worth getting angry about, all of this only makes sense if God is there. For our pain to mean something and to matter, God must be in the picture. I want to begin there gently. For Christians, suffering is a problem, but at least it is a problem. And it's a problem the Christian faith takes really seriously. I've always found this very comforting when I look to Jesus, but he doesn't give me knee-jerk, one-line responses to my pain. He doesn't short-circuit the hard questions. In fact, if you read a book of the Bible called Job, you'll find that. You read it, and it tells you, don't give easy answers to people's pain. There aren't any. Don't go around saying that all suffering is punishment. It isn't, and it's not your place to say that. As I stand here this lunchtime, there are so many things that it's not my place to say, so I won't say them. But I haven't got nothing to say. When I look at Jesus, I do find someone who speaks and speaks clearly and compassionately to a suffering world. And for the rest of our time, I just want to share 4 of the things that Jesus says to us in our pain. Firstly, Jesus looks at our suffering world and he says, it wasn't meant to be this way. It wasn't meant to be this way. There's a moment in Jesus' life, and if you were here with us on Tuesday night, you'd have read it with us, where a close friend of his, Lazarus, falls ill and dies. And what's remarkable about Jesus' reaction is that he isn't just sad, although he is. He's also angry. There's a verse up on the screen, which you'd be able to find in these John's Gospels that you've all got. And it says there, when Jesus saw Lazarus' sister weeping, and the Jews who'd come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. Those are words which carry the sense of anger. Suffering in our world is worth getting angry about. And while I think that Stephen Fry's conclusions are way off base, his anger tells me that he understands something really, really important about suffering. Our world was not meant to be this way. That's why we struggle with it. That's why the poet Dylan Thomas urged his father not to go gentle into that good night, but to rage against the dying of the light. For the Christian, sorrow and anger are right responses to the way the world is now, because it wasn't meant to be this way. According to the Bible, reality is out of joint. Something about our world is deeply broken. We were made for a relationship with God. And our decision, humanity's, to turn away from God, to break that relationship, has left our world broken as well. It's not that God created a world with misery in it, but he created a world with people in it who were free to choose to love him or to reject him. And the Bible tells us that we chose the latter. And I don't just need the Bible to see it. I look around and that's what I see. Now, maybe we wonder, why would God even give people that choice? But as I said yesterday, it comes down to what he made us for. Not puppets on his string, not robots that he programmed, but real people made to know and receive and enjoy real love. And as I said, for that love to be real, it had to include the possibility of rejection. The freedom for human beings to choose not to love God. And if you've ever loved, you'll know love is dangerous like that. It leaves you vulnerable. There's risk inherent in it. And because God made the world for that kind of love, that risk is there. Now, don't mishear me. This isn't to say that the suffering we experience corresponds to individual acts of sin. Not at all. But it is to say this. Suffering in our world is a clear sign to us that things aren't right. Another moment from C.S. Lewis I find helpful. He says that God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks to us in our conscience, but shouts to us in our pain. It is his megaphone to rouse a deaf world. Suffering alerts us to the fact that something is deeply wrong and that things aren't meant to be this way. Our pain is a symptom of a broken world, and that brokenness comes down to not being in harmony with the God who made us. An attitude towards him the Bible calls sin. And at this point, I want to ask an awkward, even uncomfortable question. Are we prepared to acknowledge how much suffering is human in origin? Even lots of natural disasters around the world actually have human greed, wastefulness, exploitation, negligence at the heart of them. And then think of the relationships we have with one another and the way those get broken. Are we prepared to acknowledge that we have a hand in the suffering of others? That we've played a part in their pain? You see, we often look at suffering in the world and we ask, how can God allow that to exist? But so often I am complicit in suffering. And the question becomes, how can God allow me to exist? It wasn't meant to be this way. Suffering shows us that something in our world has gone deeply wrong, and it's worth getting angry about the way Jesus does. But anger is not his only response. Secondly, Jesus looks at the suffering in our world and he says, it won't always be this way. I do urge you to take this book away and read chapter 11 because this account of Jesus and his friend Lazarus is remarkable. He doesn't go there as a mourner to join the mourning. He goes there to end the mourning by raising Lazarus from the dead. And all through Jesus' life, the eyewitnesses around him testified to him bringing healing to the sick, sight to the blind, life to the dead. Now, we have all kinds of questions about these miraculous deeds Jesus did. And let me reiterate, these are eyewitness accounts. They're historical documents. We're reading what people actually saw. But can I also say, these miracles, they're not divine party tricks. Look what I can do. What they are pointers to God's ultimate plan for his world. You see, the Bible ends with a promise of a changed world, a world made new, a world without suffering in it. God even comes out with the stunning promise, and I've got it on the screen, that there'll be no more death, no more mourning, and that he himself will wipe away the tears from the eyes of his people. Maybe you know Lord of the Rings, and there's a moment where Sam Gamgee sees Gandalf, thought he was dead, and he says, "Gandalf, you're alive, but I thought you were dead." Does this mean that everything sad is going to come untrue? Tolkien could write that line because he was a Christian, and he knew the promise of a world made new, where everything sad is going to come untrue. God doesn't intend for his world to languish in suffering, but rather he intends to make it new, to bring a deep and unspeakable comfort to suffering people in it. And if, like me, you've been through real suffering in the past, then this is a promise worth digging into. If this is true, this world without suffering in it, it's worth holding out for. No more tears, no more pain. We're right to long for those things, because that is what God will do for our world. But maybe that sounds like a fantasy on the horizon, and we want to know, well, what about my pain now? That's what suffering people want to know. How do I get through today? Well, here's the third thing that Jesus says to our suffering. Jesus looks at our suffering world and he says, "I choose to suffer with you." That's our God's response to this world of pain. He doesn't sit distant on a celestial throne, removed from our sufferings, but he makes this world of pain and of sorrow and of death his home. He comes to be part of it, not indifferent, but involved. Often we think of the problem as suffering and we want to rage at God. We say to him, "All right, God, your move. This is a world of pain and of suffering, and as far as I can tell, you don't care. What are you going to do about it? What's your move?" And this is God's move. Not to give us an answer, not to give us a telling off, but to give us a person. God offers himself in Jesus. And in knowing him, it's not that my questions go away, but being in that relationship with him changes things. I don't know everything, but I find that I know enough. Here's why. Jesus looks at our pain, my pain, and he says, "I choose to suffer with you." God knows what it's like to suffer. The shortest verse in the Bible comes from the passage I'm alluding to. Jesus, before he raises Lazarus from the dead, sees everyone else weeping, and it just says two words, Jesus wept. God knows what it's like to cry. Now, I like nearly everything about Christmas. I especially love Christmas carols. But there's one Christmas carol I despise, Away in a Manger. The words are a bit lame. It's mainly about farm animals. It's usually sung by really pathetic children's choirs. But worst of all, it has a really wrong, blatant lie in it. "The little Lord Jesus, no crying he makes." Well, bin that carol and look at the eyewitness evidence, and you find Jesus crying a lot. The carol makes him sound immune to pain, but the eyewitnesses tell us he felt it. It hurts. We're not alone in our suffering, because God himself knows what it is to suffer. He knows what it is to cry. And that is a source of deep comfort. He's been there. I'm not alone in my pain. That's what I discovered when I was hurting. And finally, here's what Jesus says to our suffering world. He says, fourthly, "I choose to suffer for you." Yes, he suffers with us, but he also says, I choose to suffer for you. Jesus ends his life on a cruel Roman cross, put there by people in the culmination of their hatred and their bitterness and their jealousy and their injustice and their rage. But as he dies there, it seems to have been part of his plan. None of this seems to have surprised him. He was constantly saying that by dying this kind of death, where only the worst people deserve to die, he was actually dealing with the problem of our suffering. Not just the symptoms, but the root cause. Jesus claimed to be God, come in person, to deal with the price for our rejection of him. Jesus came to suffer, to end suffering. And the reason why I dare say something which sounds as glib as that, talk about suffering ending, is because of what happened after Jesus died. 3 days later, despairing and desolate, Jesus' friends went to his tomb, and they found it empty. And although they could barely believe it at first, they then met Jesus, alive again, saw him, spoke to him, touched him, ate with him. And what they discovered there spurred them on to go out and share the message of a Savior who changed the world by destroying death. Come back tomorrow lunchtime and we'll be looking in depth at the evidence for that massive claim. But that claim has changed our world. And it shows that Jesus isn't just talking about a world made new. He himself is able to bring it about. So we wonder, well, how could this God allow suffering? Where is he when it hurts? Is he unloving? Is he unwilling? Well, is he unloving? No. I see Jesus prepared to die on the cross for me, so that even though I don't know why he lets me go through everything he lets me go through, I know there's no cruelty in him because I see how far he went for me. Is God unable? Is he weak? No. Jesus rose from the dead, destroying death, creating this indelible mark on history and making genuine hope a reality. And just think about it. If God is able to take the bitterness and the evil and the scandal and the shame of what happened to Jesus and use it to bring hope, even to bring rescue, then I know his capacity to bring good out of evil is limitless, even if I can't see how he can do it right now. Christians don't have all the answers, but in Jesus we do have all we need. And in trusting this God, what we discover is that we can be in that world made new. And as we look ahead to being with God, being back in harmony with him, we have a Savior who is with us and suffered with us, whose suffering for us is a pledge that hope is there for us to have. This comfort I'm talking about, this hope I'm talking about, is so wonderful that I don't want any of you to miss out on it. And the question I have as I finish is, what will you do with the genuine hope that's on offer? When Jesus was speaking to Lazarus' sister Martha, he said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me will live even though they die. And whoever lives by believing in me will never die. Do you believe this? And my question is, what will you do with the offer of hope Jesus says he can give? Do you want to accept it for yourself? Because he is longing to give it to you. Thank you so much for listening to me so far. We've got a little bit of time for questions and answers.